Good afternoon. I'm Cecile Burnett from Oak Ridge High School. I've been there, this is my third year as a literacy coach. Today we're talking about accessibility and application of the new FAST data file and its correlation to student achievement and learning gains in ELA. Oak Ridge High School, which should not be new information to most of you, is a Title I school in Orange County and is identified as a targeted and high-need school because of its long history of underperforming across the district and the state. If you look at our 25 years of school grades, we have 4 times received an F, D 8 times, a C 9 times, and a B only 3 times. Out of those 3 were just in the last 2 years, so that's a big deal for us. But prior to that, we're talking 1 time. So long history. It is a huge school. We have 2,500, well, we know that that's kind of not exactly, we'll say 2,500 students, mostly Hispanic and Black, very small percentage of white and Asian. And we are 100% free and reduced lunch with 17% English language learners. That is the highest number in our district. And population size, we have the highest, like the actual number itself of students that are English language learners. Looking at our ELA scores as it pertains to the school grade, we know that ELA has 3 components, right? So 30% of school grade is based on our ELA scores. That is in achievement, learning gains, and how our lowest 25% perform. This in orange is Orange County, their achievement. In green is Oak Ridge High School and our achievement. And then same follows here. So we have seen since 2017 that we have been significantly behind our district as far as achievement, learning gains, and how our lowest 25% are performing in English. What we have always used in Orange County to track students is data, right? This is how we used to access if you wanted to find out how a student was doing on the clusters of data within the ELA. There's 13 standards and there's 3 clusters. If I wanted to know how my student was doing, usually I could go on here and I could look and see how they performed by the cluster, and then I could see which questions they got correct or how many they got correct or wrong. But there was no way for me to pull that information out of this system and actually see which standard was tested within that cluster and the accuracy on that particular standard. It was just given to us as a whole. This year, I found out during about the end of the first quarter that the state actually released a new data file, and if you don't know how to access this, there is a scan on there, and it has instructions for how to do this. The state released a new data file that actually provides us with the accuracy, which standard was assessed for each question, and if the student got it right or wrong. But the file's a bit of a mess. I could be intentional, but it's messy because not every student receives the same standard at the same time. Presley may have R 1.1 for question number 1, but I have R 2.3, right? But Presley and our data is going to be right next to each other, so how do you decipher that? Why does this new data file matter though? You can still track by standard. You take, your curriculum unit assessments, you work on those standards. Why does it matter that you have the state's accuracy for their per student on these individual standards? Well, in Orange County, and I love Orange County, our curriculum and our assessments are written by like 2 to 3 people. That's it. And I have a natural feeling of thinking that if you're the person that's writing the curriculum and you're writing the assessment, that can kind of be a little bit biased. So it's nice to see, okay, this is how I'm teaching the standard, and is it actually working for the state test? Because we've not really been able to see that before. The ability to evaluate the curriculum and instruction to performance of particular standards on the state test, and also the ability to look at trends. Never before, we've been told this standard isn't tested as much, but never before have we been actually able to say 2.4 was only tested 7.5% of the assessment, which is unique information. But for this purpose, we're not going to go down that road because we're talking about the accessibility, and I quickly realized that with my teachers, I was going to have to stay with them this year with what they could kind of chew and swallow as far as this data file. So, what's my purpose? As always, and this is kind of every year, this is just a different year because I have this new piece of information and what do I do with it? So to improve achievement and learning gains in ELA through the use of new data to help teachers target students strategically, and to find ways to make the data easy to access on a regular basis. My research questions. What is the impact of teacher information data overload? What happens? Are there strategies that make this processing and utilizing the information, the data, more applicable? What makes it easier for them to use it? As a teacher, I remember sitting and having spreadsheets all over my desk, and per period having to look and try to remember about this particular kid and who should I call on. And my goal has always been to make that process for a teacher simple. And then lastly, is there a correlation between data-driven instruction, targeting, grouping, differentiation, and this new state information that they've released to us for achievement and learning gains? Through research, which I was kind of doing the annotated bibliography at the same time that I got access to this file, because initially, as Dr. Gruber knows, I was going to study data leadership, data-driven instruction for algebra, and then when I found out about this, it kind of shifted everything. So going into this, doing the annotated bibliography, I kind of had that lens already of making it accessible. I wanted to know what the research said about that. So consistently they said as a literacy coach, and this was across all of them, that your technology skills, that your competency with data has a huge impact on your team's ability to receive that. That your enthusiasm, it has that top-down effect, that your enthusiasm and your use of it affects your team's ability to do so. But also staying away from that, a lot of teachers, and I'm sure you've experienced, they hear data, we're gonna have a data meeting, and it's like shame city. Especially if you've ever worked in like an STO school or somewhere around that, it can get tense in those meetings, right? And that is the absolute last thing, because then it's something that people want to stay away from, and we want them to gravitate towards it. Next piece that I was gathering from this was this one. This one hits hard, and even when I did my annotated bibliography, I was frustrated because the biggest predictors in student achievement and success is their socioeconomic status, is the school population. Well, I just showed you our school population, so you're telling me that that's the biggest predictor no matter what. And I hate that. So to me, it gives me even more drive to want to figure out how to make that not the thing for our students. So this may seem almost unrelated, but to me it's like more related. I have to work harder because they're already kind of in a deficit. So let me move over here. So my methodology, and pardon me, because you're gonna have to kind of go down the rabbit hole just slightly with me, and you're probably gonna feel like my teachers did at one point or another too, but I have to do this to show the method, because a lot of it was trial and error. We'll try this, didn't work. We'll try this, didn't work. But step one, as every year, is creating target sheets for teachers and conferencing with teachers one-on-one. I do this every year after PM1, which is Progress Monitoring 1. And this is what the sheet looks like blank. I do this sheet for my teachers. One of my learning pieces was that if you give it to teachers, and even when I was full-time in the classroom, we put a lot more emotion into this than it needs to be. But the reason we conference with the teachers afterwards is to have that discussion about a student that maybe I put in the green because they met their learning game on PM1, but you're telling me this kid just is in the hospital, we're not going to see them, something's happened, and that's probably not a kid. They'll probably end up with negligence. But having that conversation with who's in what category, who even on the first test this year already met their learning game, who's a level 2, and I have indicators at the top to keep. This is something they can grab off their desk, and I know in my 4th period who is a low 25 student, who is a high level 2, low level 2, because our school goals were that all high level 2s and above would pass, and that's how we would get our proficiency score. So this is step number 1. This is treated different and evaluated different at the beginning of the year versus after PM2, but this has to happen. And this isn't anything new. This document's new, but this concept is not new. Return. No, you gotta hit the, yeah. Okay, step 2, reach out to mentors, because that file, Bella's gonna open it now, the new state file, this is what I saw. No, not that. New state data file. So this was I went to it, we call them TAS experts, which is basically you're the data expert on your campus. And we went to a training and she was like, hey, Burnett, because people know I'm a data dweeb. And she was like, did you see that new file? And yeah, that's what it looked like. So this is what I was like, oh yeah, what are we doing with that? And she said, we don't know, nobody's cracked it yet. And for me and my personality, I was like, bet. Because I decided that was going to be what I was going to do. So this is what I was looking at originally, and what you'll see, even if you pause the video really quick. So these are all different, same question. Like this could be question number 19, and every kid was tested with a different standard. This column says if they got it correct or not, and how many points it was worth. All of them are worth 1 point, and it just says 0 or 1. But if you know how data kind of works, you have to go across. You can't do this, you can't go vertical when you're, and if you know a different formula, but this was my first thing. We get to my mentors that know better about data and how to decipher these things and crack the code on this. So what I found was, and if you would like to know how to use this, I can send you the video, and this has the formulas that I used. I used a formula called a concatenate, which is super simple, to figure all that out. At the end, and this is how big it is, and again, we're going to get back to accessibility. At the end of it, now I had for each standard the points possible, the accuracy, the percent. It was tested for that test for PM1, which was exciting to me. And I'm sharing that enthusiasm with my teams. You can return. But I needed to complete this process not just for one test, right? Because even when we look at standards, and or SBUAs is what we call them, those curriculum unit assessments, we don't just say, oh, you got a 70% on that one test, so you must be great. So I'm staring at this knowing it took me I don't know how many hours, and now I have to go do it for the last year and for PM2 and for both grade levels. So it was a lot, but it was exciting to get to this point. Here we are, beginning of 3rd quarter, was so excited to show this to my teachers and thinking that it would make sense to them. Can you imagine being a 2nd-year teacher and seeing this? And so I had a whole PLC meeting where I showed them, oh, but this is simple, I can show you. You hide this one, because we're only working on 1.2 and 2.4, so just hide all those columns and just filter for your 2nd period, and there it is. You know how your students are performing on those standards, and they're like, and and I'm going, well, just it went, and that was that. Okay, we got to take it back. So that was the whole, I need to reevaluate as an instructor, because I'm not making it accessible. They don't know it's become a daunting task, so it's not going to be used. So, step next. I just kind of went over this. What if I create a sheet where they have the students, this is the same sheet, but this time I'm going to break up the unit for them and label the standards so they just have those standards to look out per period. And they can just like write next to the kid's name which standards they need. Do you know, so using that same document, and I filtered it all for them. And then they just had to decide, does Susie Q, who had a 30%, 50%, 70% on 2.1, need help in this standard? And there we were again, crickets in the room. And it was, and I'm sitting there, and this is the part of the learning as a leader, because I'm spinning my wheels, right? Sitting at that table, feeling like it's a simple task, but knowing and seeing that it's not, and having to have that moment of self-reflection of, like, okay, what next? Because the intent was, here's the lesson, that's the standards, which kids are you targeting for this class period? Here's the lesson, here's the standards, which kids? So here we go again. And finally, I get to the point where I'm not going to have them have to decide every single time that we're doing a new unit if a student needs that standard. I'm just going to create a column where they X after looking at the 3 scores. So for example, and it's target-based, if I have a kid that had a 40, 0%, 33%, I put an X in his R 1.1 box. So then I can make it simple and show teachers this version, right, for each class period. So it's already selected, they don't have to make the decision. You're taking some of that away, because a lot of them, again, bring emotion into making those decisions, and it's hard to separate, right? Especially when you're looking at your target kids. When you have a kid that's in the red, that's saying that their trends have already been negative. So we know that they're going to need every single standard, but can we target them every single time? No. That is not, especially when we're talking about third quarter, right? We have to be more strategic in that. So maybe when I have a standard, and we know they still need help on it, but I have a standard that most people are doing well on, that's the time that I pull that child, or it's the beginning. Ooh. Take your turn. Okay, the final solution, because it didn't work. You can open that one. My teachers weren't using it. I was revising, I was walking classes, I was seeing who was using their little note takers, and I had like 50%. And those were my very enthusiastic teachers. And they would come to me and be like, hey, what do you think of these students that I'm choosing to target for this part? And that was great, but it was happening half the time, which is obviously not what we want to see. So clearly I still wasn't at the point of making it accessible to them, and something that wasn't a daunting task. So the next move was finally the final result, which is on the note taker, the handout that I gave you, was first I needed to just give them this for each target, for each period, and I needed to just give them what the lesson was with a small description and the standards, and then they could just have this one sheet and pick and pull and place students where they needed to go for that lesson. Finally, by the 4th quarter, we got to a place where every single time I walked to class, a teacher had this in their hand, and I could see that they had the quick ability to pull a group because we're doing this today. Even if they didn't plan it, which of course we don't love that as a literacy coach, but they had that accessible, like right there on their desk, because we did it in planning, and now you know for the entire unit who you should hit for each day of the week, because you planned it ahead of time. So that was the goal, and we found great success in that. Now, are we 100% sure it translated to student success? I was only able to authentically look at 3 teachers because different teachers having different classes. For example, I had a teacher that had all sheltered one year and then went to only having 2 sheltered. So I only have 3 ninth grade teachers, and she's a little different too. She didn't have sheltered her first year, and then she did her second. But this is their achievement in 2024 to 2025. Now, you only see an increase for one of them, which is fine, for achievement. Our ninth graders came in at 24% at grade level, so that was really, really low to begin with. So this kind of doesn't surprise me as much as it may look like for achievement. However, we saw great growth when it came to learning gains overall. So targeting learning gains hits every student, mostly every student. And we went from, well, teacher 1 did, from 50% to 63%. Teacher 2 dropped 2%. Teacher 3 went from 55 to 62% learning gains, which is pretty big. This one blew me away though. For our lowest 25%, just for these teachers, these were the increases in their learning gains. From 50 to 77%, from 46 to 77, and 68 to 70, which is huge. Overall for the school, our achievement, our learning gains, and our lowest 25 learning gains went up. So do I know that it was directly this? No, but do I know that data was more accessible and that the conversations were able to be had and we got to a place? Yes. Did we see improvement? Yes. Can I directly say that it was because of our conversations? I don't think anybody can do that, and that's what the research told me too. Next steps to me would be conferencing with my teachers that are returning and asking them about their goals as far as getting comfortable with data. What would you like to maybe take over, or do you just want me to keep doing the same thing? Digging deeper, finding those trends. Maybe there's a trend between ELL students and the standards that they see more often than a level 5 student, and vice versa. Next would be to reach out to others in the district, because I have not yet heard of anybody else doing anything with this file, and I'm really, really curious, and I want to collaborate and do the things with them. That would be fun and get new ideas. Lessons in leadership. Success is not linear, and it can be messy, and it was messy. Self-awareness and continuous relationship building, and checking in with my mentors more. I do wish that at times I had talked about the strategies I was trying with some of my mentors on campus, just to kind of gauge with them, and that was kind of a lesson there. References. And then my other half, Zach, Grandma Joyce, who watches my kids while I'm here. Principal, grandparents, my mother, father, Dr. Gruber, and my dog. And you guys.
I'll support the thank your dog. I totally agree.
They're your comfort animal.
Pardon, questions?
Yes.
So your school's very lucky. You know, I mean, to have your passion, I think is so critical. To want to make a difference in a challenging environment, I think that's huge. But I think most importantly, what I was hearing from you was your flexibility. So this isn't going to work, and having the sensitivity to understand when you look in someone's face and there's no one home, or to understand that it's too overwhelming or it's too much. Because, you know, you showed us some of those sheets, and I'm thinking, I'm a teacher, I'm shutting down. It's too much. So I think what you've seen is how important it is not just to have data, but to have the right data and to use it in the right place, you know, at the right time. So that's a very critical lesson. What does that make? Do you agree with that?
No. That was the whole goal. That was the goal.
But I also appreciate what I heard you say about learning from your mentors. And I think when you are the only person in your school doing the thing, it's imperative that you stay on top of what the state's doing and that you work with your colleagues, especially in such a high stakes environment.
Yes.
So kudos to you for that. There was no question there.
Okay.
So where's the question? All right, questions. No,
Irene, you've got a questioning face.
Yeah, because it was just a lot of data that was there, and
I know.
I can see why the teachers were kind of confused, what have you. So how long did it take, well, the hours that it took you, were you the only one working on this, or did you have a team with you working on this?
It was a me. If you ever, okay, so if you ever saw me in that corner, just like in it, actually Bella knows, and just kind of like going at something and lots of colors on my glasses, that's what I was doing. Was breaking all of that down. And there were times that my principal said to me, like, is it worth it? If they're not using it, it's not worth your time right now. You'd be better off being in the classroom. And there were times that I struggled with that, and I was like, I justified it because I was like, no, I'm doing it on Saturdays. So I wasn't not being present on my campus. But I got to a point with that right before the last one that I transitioned to, after the X's and being like, okay, it's all right there, that I was like, maybe it's not worth it. And then that next sheet, and it was like, holy, we've done it. And then it did eventually. And now that I know, it took a lot more time simply because of breaking down that file the first time, not knowing how to do it, and kind of navigating that. But now it would be more of a well-oiled machine. But no.
Had you considered asking your district for to get a better software system? Because what you were showing, like there's programs that would break that down. I know you did a great job with your brain, but there are programs that would break that down.
So
That they purchase.
They would break that file down? I have not heard of that. But there's one of the APs, our API at Oak Ridge is like, she watches data sports stuff for fun just because she likes to learn new formulas. And I went to her with this, and she doesn't know about the program, but we were on like AI, Google Sheets, trying to figure out formulas for it, but like nobody at my district had cracked it.
Leadership dashboard and student dashboard, that will break that down.
So we have that, but it's only for our local assessments. It wasn't for the state assessment. So we have Performance Matters, but it would only tell us, or Performance Matters, when you pull that file out, would only tell you for the cluster. It would not tell you for the individual standard. The only way you could get the individual standard at the time was if you did your local, like my curriculum assessments. All it would tell you was the student is at or below for literary standards, or which doesn't say what standards. So that's like, well, there's 4 of those, but anyway. Bye.